So Qurutob is made with these dehydrated yogurt balls called kurut, and in order to use them, we need to rehydrate them using about 250 milliliters of water. Then we'll rehydrate them for a few hours, during which time we're going to make two types of bread. So let's start with the first type, which is a Tajik naan. Into a bowl, we'll put 100 mils of water, 100 mils of whole milk, about a tablespoon of salt, about a tablespoon of sugar, 1 packet of active dry yeast. Then we're going to weigh out 350 grams of bread flour and dump it right into our wet ingredients. Add a few tablespoons of olive oil and mix that up until a nice soft dough is formed. At this point it's a little too wet still, so I'm going to add in a little bit more flour. And just judge it by sense of feel. When it stops feeling tacky and starts feeling like a nice soft dough, put it into a oiled up bowl, cover it up with a towel, and let it relax for about a half an hour while we make our other bread. Again, into a bowl, we're going to put 100 milliliters of water, this time a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of baking soda, if I can get it out of the box. Worst pouring mechanism ever. A packet of active dry yeast, and again 350 grams by weight of bread flour. So mix those ingredients all together and again knead it until we have a nice supple dough. And put it in another oiled bowl. Cover it up for another 30 minutes while we work on our first dough now that it's ready to be handled again. Out of our risen dough, you should be able to get 2 small loaves. So we're going to keep one of those in the freezer for later and work on one of them. So this is kind of going to be shaped similar to a Neapolitan pizza. Start pressing it out from the middle. Make sort of a lip around the edge. Pull a little at the edges to start stretching it out. And don't worry if it gets super thin, like a half a centimeter I'm talking, because when we throw this in the oven it's going to fluff up. Make it thinner than you'd think. Now let's separate an egg and hold on to both the yolk and the egg whites. So my apologies, I lost the footage for this step, but what you're going to do here is take a preheated sheet pan or baking steel, brush the bottom of the dough with egg whites, then you're going to take a fork and make any sort of pretty pattern that you want in the top of the dough. This is going to create little holes to keep the dough from puffing up too high, and it's just aesthetic as well. In Tajikistan, they use special stamps in different patterns that would do the same thing. You're going to brush the top with the egg yolks and then sprinkle sesame seeds on top of that. Carefully take the entire preheated steel and slide it back into the oven without burning yourself. We're going to throw that into a 218 centigrade oven or 425 degree freedom units for about 25 minutes or until the outside is crispy and golden brown. Now back to our second dough, which is called fatir. We're going to roll this out super thin. It's basically a laminated dough. So we're going to start by pressing it out as thin as it can go, and then using a rolling pin, roll it out as thin as humanly possible. We're talking about 3 millimeters thick until you get a large sheet of dough. Now we're going to take some melted butter and brush the entire face of our sheet of dough. And starting at one end, preferably the disfigured end, if you have one, just roll it into a snake. And this is going to create little layers of dough with butter in between, so it'll fluff up nicely. Now brush the entire thing with butter on the outside, and starting at one end, let's roll it into a coil. Throw it back into a bowl and let it sit for a few minutes just to relax. It's probably developed quite a bit of gluten at this point, so we want to let it soften up so it's easier to work with. Once it's softened up, press it out with your palm until it's about the same size as our naan was. And then again with a fork, we're going to stamp this out into a pretty little pattern, whatever your mind can think of. Then we're going to brush the outside of this with some more melted butter. Sprinkle some more sesame seeds and throw it on in the oven. And this one goes in for about the same amount of time as the other bread. Let both those breads cool on a cooling rack when they're done, and you want them to be fully cooled before using them. So once the fatir is totally cool to the touch, we're going to start tearing it apart. I know we put so much effort into this bread and now we're just dismantling it, but it's for good reason. This is the base of our salad. So into a bowl, tear that bread apart and pour our yogurt over the entire thing. Make sure it is spread evenly over the bread, so mix it up a little bit. On top of that, we're going to take about a half an onion and slice it with a mandolin to get as thin as possible slices. You can use a knife, but it's a lot easier this way. Just be careful of your fingers. Next up, we're going to slice up a cucumber into 3 centimeter by 1 centimeter slices. And put a layer of those down on top of the onions. Next, I'm going to slice up 3 vine tomatoes into similar size slices. Layer those up. Slice up the greens of a few scallions and spread those over the top, as well as some parsley and some dill. And then we can go back in with some more tomatoes. And this is a very tomato-focused dish, as you can see, so be sure to use the ripest, freshest tomatoes you can find. So I don't know how to go about this. I guess you're supposed to scoop the salad with the naan. Well, the naan is nice and fluffy, so that's a good start. And let me just try and dig down and get the yogurt and everything. So once you get to the bottom of the dish, you sort of start picking up the yogurt flavor, but it's not a very strong yogurty flavor at all. And really, most of what I'm tasting is tomato, cucumber, and dill. So it's just a very fresh kind of salad. If you're gonna make this at home, I would recommend skipping out on the exotic ingredients. So the rehydration of the yogurt balls, the specialty breads. Use what you got. Use some run-of-the-mill Greek yogurt, and if you've got some fluffy sort of artisanal bread in your area, then use that as well. But yeah, not a bad weeknight kind of salad dish. As always, the recipe link will be in the description. So if you like this video and you want to see more international cooking videos, then please hit that subscribe button. See you next time. Cheers.